The mug slipped from my hand before I even realized it. It hit the tile and shattered porcelain pieces scattered across the floor like fallen teeth. I froze. My bare feet didn't move. Then came the footsteps. Fast, sharp, familiar. Lorna burst into the kitchen, her eyes already blazing. "Are you serious?" "Again," she snapped. "You don't pay for anything here and now you break things." I opened my mouth to apologize, but she raised her voice over mine. "You know what I'm done. Get out or I'll call the cops." At first I thought I misheard her, but then she reached for her phone. Her thumb hovered over the dial pad. "Lorna," I said quietly. "No, I mean it. Get out." I looked at the broken mug, then at my daughter. Her cheeks flushed, her hands shaking, her voice cold. I didn't speak again. I stepped away from the mess and walked toward the sliding door. Outside, the air was still. My garden, what was left of it, sat in the corner of the yard. A few herbs I'd managed to keep alive, some wildflowers struggling under her landscaping stones. I stepped onto the patio, the cement cold beneath my heels, and felt the tremble in my chest shift. Not fear, not yet. Something else. A quiet knowing. She didn't mean just today. She didn't mean just because of the mug. She meant she didn't want me anymore. I stood there for a long while, listening to the sound of her inside, pacing, slamming a drawer. She didn't follow me out. She didn't even look to see if I had left. The garden was the only thing in that house that still had my hands in it. But the deed had my name. I never took it off. I never handed it over. Not after Ray died. Not even when I moved in. She thought I had nothing left. She thought I'd be scared, but I walked back inside. After Ray died, the house felt too empty, too heavy with memories. Every corner still held his voice, his tools, his warmth. Lorna convinced me to sell it, said it was too much for me alone. She suggested I move in with her and Eric back into the old house Ray and I had built from the ground up, the one we had left to her when we downsized. She promised it would be temporary, just until I felt steady again. I sold our smaller home, handed her the money so she could invest it into her business plans. I thought I was helping her grow. I didn't know I was disappearing. I arrived with one suitcase and the intention of not staying long. But weeks blurred into months, and then years, and somehow I was still there, sleeping in their guest room, folding their laundry, timing my showers. At first, she made tea for me, left notes by the kettle. Then came the new house rules. No boiling anything pungent, no talking on the phone after 9, no leaving shoes by the front door, no plants on the patio. Eventually I became quiet. Not because I agreed, but because noise started arguments. And arguments always ended with her reminding me I didn't contribute. So I did what I knew how to do. I cleaned the fridge, cooked dinner, replaced the paper towels without being asked. But I stopped being her mother. Somewhere between those weeks and years I had become staff. Not spoken to, only spoken at. I think I could have endured it longer if not for what happened last Saturday. Lorna was throwing one of her networking things, wine-catered appetizers, the kind of casual bragging that floats around real estate agents with expensive smiles. I stayed in the kitchen like always, refilling the cheese board, keeping the ice bucket full. Then someone asked jokingly who made the spinach dip. Oh, her Lorna had laughed, not even turning around to gesture. That's just our live-in ghost. She floats around, makes snacks, then vanishes. They laughed, not cruelly, just enough. I stood there behind the counter, hands wet from washing dishes, and I stared at the back of her head. She didn't even glance my way. Not even a smirk of acknowledgement. I wasn't a person anymore. I was a punchline in my own daughter's house. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark, the quiet pressing in around me like a closing wall. The folder was a pale gray, smooth, expensive. Lorna placed it on the kitchen table like it was nothing, right next to my tea. She didn't sit, just stood there, arms folded, voice syrupy. "Mom, this is just a formality. It's about the house. Strictly paperwork. You know, for taxes, streamlining things." I didn't say a word. Not right away. I lifted my teacup, took a sip, and watched her. She always did this, wrapped commands in sugar, hoping I'd swallow them whole. She opened the folder and flipped to a highlighted line. "It's still your home, of course. This just makes everything easier. Refinancing equity. It's normal." Her tone made it sound like I was being difficult, just for blinking. I didn't touch the pen. Instead, I asked, "Whose name is on the deed now?" She shifted. "Well, yours, but that's the point. It's outdated. We're just modernizing the title." I said it quietly. Lorna blinked. "No," I nodded once. "No, Lorna." She didn't argue. She just closed the folder too fast, too sharp, and walked out without another word. That silence echoed longer than any shouting match could have. I thought it would end there. It didn't. A week later, the phone rang while I was pruning the last of my potted basil. It was the bank. "Mrs. Langley?" the woman asked. "No," I corrected gently. "This is Avis Langley. We have a mortgage application on file associated with your property," she said. "We just needed to confirm a few details. It lists a Lorna Langley as the primary homeowner. Is that correct?" My chest went still. I asked for a copy. 2 days later, a thick envelope arrived. I sat at the kitchen table, hands cold, and opened it. The signature at the bottom of the forged deed was smooth, confident, and unmistakably hers. My daughter had claimed I was incapable of managing finances and listed herself as sole decision-maker for my safety. I didn't cry. I placed the folder back in the envelope and stood up. There was only one person I needed to call. I waited until dinner was done and the dishwasher hummed low. The house had that false calm it always did after one of Lorna's storms, quiet but not peaceful. She was in the living room scrolling through her phone like nothing had happened. I walked in with the folder in my hand. "I spoke to the bank," I said. She didn't look up. So I placed the envelope gently on the coffee table between us. They sent me the application. That got her attention. Her eyes flicked to the envelope, then to me. "You went behind my back." "No," I said steady. "You went behind mine." She stood, arms crossing. "Mom, you don't understand how any of this works. You don't contribute. You just live here." I kept my voice low. "I cook. I clean. I keep this house in order. You take up space," she snapped. "You live here because I let you." That was when something broke, not loud, but clean. I looked her in the eye and said, "No, I live here because it's mine." Her face froze. For a second, she looked like a stranger. She scoffed, half laughed. "You're delusional." I said nothing else, just turned and walked to my room. That night, with the moon hanging low behind the blinds, I opened the drawer at the back of my closet. It was lined with soft flannel, faded with time. Beneath my sewing kit and a stack of old letters lay the folder, aged, creased, but intact. The deed. Paul and I had kept it here since 1983. We never talked about selling, never refinanced, never even loaned against it. We were proud of that. My name was right there in bold ink. Avis Langley, sole owner. I ran my hand over it, remembering the day we signed it the way Paul had winked at me after the notary left. I folded it shut again and slid it into my handbag. Tomorrow, I'd need it, because tomorrow I had an appointment with Walter. The house was still when I rose, no footsteps above, no kettle whistling, no Lorna barking orders about crumbs on the counter. Just the sound of my own breath as I moved through the room I had slept in for 4 hollow years. I opened the closet and pulled out the old suitcase I hadn't used since Paul's funeral. The zipper stuck at first, but it gave way with a tug. I packed light. 2 clean blouses, a cardigan, my wallet, phone charger, reading glasses. Then I reached under the bed for the small tin box where I kept what mattered most, the marriage certificate still bearing our full names in slanted ink. A black and white photo from our wedding day, Paul, in a hand-me-down suit, me in the cream dress Mama helped me stitch. His grin, boyish and sure, still made something flutter in my chest. I wrapped the photo in one of Paul's old handkerchiefs and laid it gently beside the deed. Finally, I sat at my desk and wrote, "Lorna, I'm done begging for space in a house I paid for with my life. Mom." I folded the note and slid it beneath the sugar bowl she never touched. Then I stood, zipped the suitcase, and took one last look at the room. Not out of sentiment, just closure. Outside, the early sky was gray with promise. I walked to the curb and called Walter. He picked up on the second ring. Avis. His voice still had that lawyer's edge, even in retirement. "I need a favor," I said. He didn't ask questions. "My office. 10:30. I nodded, though he couldn't see it. "I'll be there." By the time Lorna came downstairs, I was long gone, suitcase in hand, deed in my bag, and the part of myself she thought she'd erased, finally stepping back into the light. Walter hadn't changed much. His hair was thinner, his suit less crisp, but his eyes still held that quiet sharpness that made people think twice before speaking out of turn. He scanned the deed, then the bank documents, nodding slowly as he read. "She tried to refinance it in your name without your consent," he said. "We can lock it down. File a restriction on the title, notify the county records office. She won't be able to touch it again." "Good," I said. "And I want to sell." His eyebrows lifted. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "I don't want the house anymore. I just want my name back." He didn't argue. He made a few calls, had a form printed, then slid a pen across the table. "Then let's make it official." By noon, the legal protections were filed. I stepped outside with a new stillness in my chest. Not the tightness of fear, something steadier. Like a gear had finally clicked back into place. I walked 2 blocks down past the cafe, where Paul and I used to sit after church, and into a small real estate office, tucked between a bakery and a law firm. The receptionist looked up, and for a second, her face lit up with recognition. "Miss Langley," she said. "I'm Jessica Tran. You probably don't remember me. I used to come to your library when I was little." I did remember her quiet girl always returning books early. "I want to sell a house," I said. "Today?" She blinked. "Well, let's see what we can do." We sat together for over an hour, sorting through photos, documents, and pricing options. I told her I didn't want signs in the yard or walkthroughs with strangers. Just qualified buyers. No fuss. No drama. By the time I finished a second cup of tea, the listing was live. Private, direct, discreet. That evening, Jessica called me with 3 offers. All in full. 1 in cash. I chose the couple who wrote a letter with their bid, something about starting over, wanting quiet. I understood that. The papers were set to finalize in 7 days. The first call came just after dinner. I let it ring. The second followed 2 minutes later, then the third. By the time I had finished brushing my hair, the phone lit up again. Lorna's name flashing in bright white letters, demanding my attention, the way she always had when she wanted something. I set the phone face down on the nightstand. Around midnight, she left her first voicemail. "Mom, this isn't funny. You can't sell this house, we live here. Call me back." Her voice wavered on the word "we," as if she hoped saying it out loud might make it true. I slipped the phone into my purse and turned it off. By morning, I checked into a small hotel 2 towns over. Clean sheets, a quiet hallway, no footsteps thundering overhead. I brewed tea in the little room and watched the sun rise without waiting for anyone's approval. At exactly 8:30 a.m., Jessica texted me, "Courier delivered." I imagined the scene without needing to witness it. Lorna, opening the front door in her robe, irritation already primed. the courier handing her a thick, certified envelope. Her scanning the label confused at the sender line reading A. Langley, not mom, not mother, not anything warm or familiar. I pictured the moment her eyes hit the words, "Notice to vacate 7 days. Transfer of ownership, effective immediately. No loopholes, no appeals. Everything stamped, filed, verified." Around noon, my phone now turned on, buzzed with new messages. "Mom, what is this? You can't just do this. Call me, answer me." Then one quieter. "Please, Mom, just talk to me." I didn't respond, not out of cruelty, just clarity. By late afternoon, Jessica called to confirm the buyers had signed their side of the paperwork. The sale would close without issue. I thanked her, packed my small suitcase, and stepped outside into the warm air. It felt different now, lighter, as if the weight I'd carried for years had finally slid off my shoulders. I walked toward the bus stop, already thinking about the apartment I would tour next. Lorna tried to play it cool. By midweek, she was out front, in oversized sunglasses and tall heels, talking on the phone too loudly, pretending the whole thing was some sort of clerical mix-up. "Yeah, we're just handling some paperwork." "No big deal," she told someone, waving her hand like she was shooing away a mosquito. "It's just a title issue." But the neighbors weren't stupid. They'd seen the courier. They'd seen the movers come and go. They saw the way the for sale sign never showed up in the yard, how the cars of strangers pulled in and out quietly, only staying long enough to glance through windows. On Thursday morning, Mrs. Keener from across the street walked her little dog past and paused just long enough to say, "Big changes, huh?" Her tone wasn't cruel, just sharp, observing. Lorna didn't respond. Inside, the boxes piled up, some taped neatly, some not. Her designer shoes went into trash bags. The dishes rattled against each other in thin cardboard. It wasn't elegant, not like she'd imagined moving would be. Eric said even less than usual. He didn't ask questions. He didn't argue. Just watched the pieces of their life get stacked beside the door. At one point, I imagined he might defend her, that he'd yell demand answers, try to pin the whole thing on me. But he didn't. That afternoon, while Lorna taped another box shut, he quietly gathered his overnight bag. She looked up. "What are you doing?" He zipped the bag without looking at her. "I'm going to my mother's for a while." That's it. Eric paused in the doorway. "I didn't sign any of those papers, Lorna. I didn't know. And I won't clean up after it." She didn't stop him. Maybe because she knew she couldn't. He left. No hug. No slam of the door. Just the soft click of departure. By the next morning, the driveway was empty, except for a few soggy boxes she hadn't moved in time. I heard from Jessica that the new couple wanted to paint the front door pale green. I told her that sounded just fine. The apartment isn't large, but it's enough. Clean floors, quiet neighbors. A window that catches the evening sun just right. I'd unpacked most of my things by the third day. It didn't take long. A few clothes, some books. The photo of Paul and me now sits on the windowsill beside a small pot of mint. That night, I brewed a cup of tea and stepped out onto the small balcony. The city glowed below soft amber lights blinking through the dusk. I took a sip and let the warmth settle in my chest. Then the buzzer rang. It startled me at first. No one had visited. No one even knew the address except Jessica and Walter. I stepped inside and pressed the intercom. "Hello?" There was a pause, then static, then a breathless voice I hadn't heard in days. "Please, Mom. It's me." I didn't say anything. The voice cracked. "I know what I did. I know I messed everything up. But I have nowhere to go." I glanced out the window. Down at the front gate, Lorna stood alone, arms wrapped around herself. Hair disheveled, makeup streaked beneath her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Please." I held the receiver for a long moment, listening to her breath, the silence between words. She was no longer the daughter with sharp heels and sharper words. She looked small, almost unfamiliar. I walked away from the intercom without answering, slid the curtain closed slowly, firmly. My tea had gone lukewarm, but I drank the rest anyway. The mint was soft and clean on my tongue. She stayed at the gate a while longer. I could feel it more than see it. The stillness of someone waiting for something that wouldn't come. Eventually, her shape disappeared from the glass. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I folded my blanket, turned off the lights, and lay down with a steadiness I hadn't felt in years. It's strange how quickly a place can start to feel like home. I thought I'd miss the garden, the creaking floorboards, the kitchen window that faced east. But here, things grow differently. Slower, but with purpose. On the balcony, I've planted mint thyme and 2 small tomato vines. They catch the morning sun just enough to stay hopeful. Most days I read. Sometimes I sew. I've even started writing letters again, ones I don't always send. I keep them in a drawer next to the photo of Paul. He'd like it here, I think. He always preferred quiet over company. The phone rings now and then. I let it. Some calls come from unknown numbers, but I know her voice when I hear it on the voicemail. Sometimes she's angry. Sometimes she just says, "Hi, Mom," like nothing ever happened. I don't delete them, but I don't return them either. This afternoon, I trimmed the herbs and set water to boil. While the kettle whistled, the intercom buzzed again. A different tone this time, longer, hesitant. I didn't go to the panel. Instead, I stepped outside onto the balcony. There she was at the gate again. Same worn jacket, but this time her eyes found mine almost instantly. She raised a hand, not waving, just asking for something without words. I stood there, one hand on the railing. "Please," she mouthed. I didn't shout. I didn't scold. I leaned forward just slightly and said calm and even, "Don't try to trick an old woman, especially your mother." Then I turned and stepped back inside. The kettle was still hissing, but the sound didn't feel urgent. I poured the water, slowly steeped the tea, and sat by the window. There were things I had lost. Time, trust, pieces of the version of motherhood I once believed in, but not myself. Not anymore.